guys did movies that I think some of you have seen and some of you have not seen. And I'll just say that I feel that all of you guys have done something that's a little bit different and a little bit unusual and a little deeper than, in some cases, a lot deeper than sort of the average fare. And I think these days also the time has come for us to kind of bring it out to the masses a little more. So I appreciate that your movies are kind of about that. You know, singing to the choir is good, but getting it out there, I think, is really, really important. So thank you all for your work. It's just awesome stuff. I want to get down with you a little bit, so get ready. Betsy, I like to start with you because you're nearest me. And I know you're a good chatter. She's a good chatter, this one, and she's a brainiac.
You know what? They put two women on the stage with a bunch of guys, so like,
yeah,
you guys just get comfy.
So Betsy, I just want you to talk a little bit about, also Betsy, I don't know, Jerry, if you said that she's having a book that's coming out there too, so that's really awesome. So just, why don't you talk with me about, or talk with everyone what we were talking to me about?
Oh, we're going to go right there now?
I think so. Why not? Well, as far as, I mean, why don't you tell me, first of all, why you're doing the movie that you're doing right now?
Well, I don't know that people know. I'm currently making another Bleep. We're in production now.
Yay.
And it should come out, we waited 10 years. Actually, February 4th is the 10-year anniversary of the film opening in its first theater in Yelm, Washington. So we're 10 years out, and we decided that was long enough to wait and that we were ready to make a new one. So we're in production now, and we'll be done, I don't know, maybe at the end of this year, maybe at the beginning of next year.
And it's called What the Bleep, Now What? So isn't that cool?
That's what it's called now. What the Bleep, Now What?
Yeah, so, and that's why you decided to do it. And is there something in this movie that you felt that was still needed to be said?
Well, I think that a lot has happened in the last 10 years in terms of what's going on in science, what's going on in, obviously, you know, New Thought, New Age, and spirituality has become much more mainstream. You know, it's kind of okay and cool to wear crystals and to be into those kinds of things, and to say things like, I create my reality, is much more common than it used to be. So I think that what we're examining in the new film, and I can't really say too much right now, but really I think what we're looking at is the sort of cross-section between science and mysticism, and now what are we going to do about this stuff? Like, it's all kind of pretty well known, and science is, you know, sort of proving a lot of what the mystics knew a long time ago. Now what are we going to do with this, and where are we going? And really, I think the big thing that we're examining is the 800-pound gorilla, which is what science hasn't touched yet, which is consciousness.
Nice.
So there's a lot of great stuff going on in the world of science, in studies of consciousness, that we're going to really focus on.
Cool. So hello. How are you doing, Patrick? I love your movie. For you guys who didn't see it, Finding Joe. This is such a cool movie. I really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you.
So cool. So why did you do your movie?
I have no idea still.
Well, that's a good answer.
No, I think there's a bunch of different things that go on with that question. So the physical reason is, you know, I was having a bit of a crisis, and both of my parents died, you know, really close together. And I took that to be a wake-up call. And meanwhile, I'd been thinking about doing this film for quite some time. Meanwhile, it was coming off the tail end of a wonderful midlife crisis. And so the physical reason was, there was a few crises happening, and it was kind of a wake-up call, and I decided to make the film. And then, you know, the purpose, the why of the film is really, I wanted to bring Campbell's ideas to a more mainstream audience.
Nice. Do you, can you please hand your mic to Austin? Because, oh, you've got a front row and back row. Okay, cool. So Austin, again, People versus the State of Illusion. It's one of my favorite movies right now. I love that movie.
Thank you.
You guys all just really rocked it. Yeah, I mean, and having that really significant storyline going through it, I think, is also really cool. And the, you know, the idea of being in prison and what goes on with that. And so, why did you do it?
You know, there's that old adage, you teach what you need to learn. So I've been in this genre for a long time and teaching it, and truthfully, it's all stuff that I'm trying to learn constantly and be a student of. And multimedia, of course, is such a captivating way of forming and transmitting ideas to people more and more so. And so it just seemed like a fun creative project, and it scared the hell out of me. And whenever something scares the hell out of me, it's like, it's fun to do. I like to get it.
That's so perfect, because, you know, that's the only way we're going to ever grow. So Sebastian, we got to see a little bit of your clip last night with all those awesome rockin' people in your movie and everything. And I know you've done a lot of different things, as you all have, you know, and then we're specifically talking about the idea of consciousness, what we're doing with the media that we have. You know, we have film and TV and movies, and the same thing. And that's our way of getting to people, you know. A long time ago it was smoke signals and stuff like that, and now it's, you know, essentially really movies. And so in order to get the consciousness kicked into another notch, another gear, I think that's what you guys are all doing. And so I just want you to talk a little bit to that with your movie and your experience.
So specifically why I made this film, or specifically the power of media to be able to support that?
Well, we're going to definitely talk about that, so if you can touch on both, just kind of give us an idea of why you did your movie, and then go into the second part.
I think as a kid, what I wasn't able to achieve in free communication, let's say in a familial place, that sometimes people we know the best, we have the toughest time going the deepest because we've known each other so long. So let's say a brother and a sister, or a parent and a son or a daughter. And sometimes we expect after a certain amount of months or years to keep seeing the same person, which is wonderful because there's an ease, but then it also poses and brings about a new challenge, which is the expectation of us to remain the same. Which is why if somebody has a major paradigm shift in their life over something, like let's say they say that they're going to be vegetarian, or that they're going to love somebody of the same sex, that a lot of times the last people they'll tell is the person they're related to. I think that as a kid, the freedom of communication and intimacy and vulnerability and transparency that I sought out, I wasn't able to find in certain areas, and so I was very attracted to the theater and to doing plays, because immediately I could walk into a room where I couldn't create this communication that was liberated and open with a stranger, even with someone that I was related to, but I could go into the theater and right off the bat I'd be supported in an area to say, we're going to care for each other and we're going to be vulnerable and it's okay, and how liberating and freeing that was. So I think in the creation of this film, I think just subconsciously the gestation of that desire and the pleasure in being able to find and locate that communication interpersonally, I thought it really came about with asking deep questions and being able to put it forth in a way that was accessible for other people to act as fodder, essentially, for other people to ask those questions. So in other words, the film, how good it is, doesn't really matter, any of these films. It's the response that people take away from it that is the meaning of the film. So a friend of mine came to see the film. He's a fight promoter. He's just like a rough guy. And he came, he said, man, I didn't like your film at all. He's got 4 adopted daughters, right? 3 adopted daughters. He said, but afterwards, the conversation we had about love over dinner, thank you so much. So I said, okay, that's why we're making these films.
Awesome. Excellent. I love that. Ooh, yeah, nice answer. So let's see, who has the mic? Actually, you want to give it to Richard. So Richard, you distribute a lot of films, and which is a whole other element of the creation of getting the word out there. So speak to us about that.
Well, at Beyond Words Publishing, for the first, exactly the first 20 years of our existence, we published and distributed books. And then when What the Bleep Do We Know came out, I went to see the movie, and all of a sudden I saw Dr. Masaru Emoto's water crystal photos in the movie, and I let out a yell in the theater. Everybody looked at me because we were publishing Dr. Emoto that same week, and we did a book called Hidden Messages in Water, and I didn't know, he had never told us that he was in the movie. He forgot that he was in it.
We talked to him like a year or 2 ago. That's why.
And something that I don't think you know, Betsy, I then went back to see the film a second time. And in the film, there's a Native American shaman who's talking about when Columbus's ships came to the New World, no one could see them because they never had within their realm of experience these big two-masted or four-masted clipper ships. And so he concentrated on the ships for several days, concentrated on the water, and eventually was able to see them. And in that moment, I took out a piece of paper and I wrote down, what if success wanted to come to me, but it didn't look like anything that I had ever been taught in school or from parents? And I realized I would just push success out the door as quickly as I could if it didn't look like what I thought it should look like. So that was a breakthrough for me. Our company turned around immediately. Your film was the very first film that we helped to sell. And then you came to us in October of that year and you said, I'd like to do a book called The Little Book of Bleeps. And normally a book takes a year, and Betsy said, I'd like to have it out for Christmas. And so we did it. And it came out, and I think it sold like 25,000 copies. So you've been very instrumental in Beyond Words' success. So thank you.
Thank you. So let's see. Okay, so I would also like to ask Paul to speak a little bit about bringing this movie Afterlife to us, to the world, and a little bit of your process about that.
Sure. Well, I'm a book author as well as a documentary filmmaker, and I've written about 10 books on near-death experiences. And all of a sudden I noticed in the not late 2000s, but about 2006 or 2008, that there was a real sea change in near-death studies. That because researchers were able to collect far more near-death experiences from all over the world, where they hadn't been able to do that before the internet, we were actually able to examine the nature of near-death experiences in other countries. So we could compare a Saudi near-death experience with someone in Nebraska, for instance. And I saw this as a huge shift in near-death studies, which I'd been waiting for some time because it was getting kind of boring up to that point. You know, we were just dealing with the near-death experiences we could collect out of emergency rooms pretty much. And I decided, in addition to writing a couple of books about that new approach, decided to do a documentary film about it because I felt that it was important for one thing, and that near-death experiences up to that point had been handled as being sensational events, which they are, but they're not tabloid events. They're very common events that will happen to many of us when we die. So that was the process that went on in my head about that film.
Cool, thank you. So if you can hand the mic to Ben. Ben, this movie about really bringing the concept of what fear is, what fear does. I want you to know I was speaking to a really amazing reporter today and journalist, and she asked me, she said, when this person did this movie, she wasn't able to see it. She said, did he bring out the points about what fear causes in our society? And I said, yeah, he did. And I know it was a shorter movie, and so you couldn't really dive in, but I'd just like you to talk to that a little bit.
You know, when I first started having the idea of making this film was around, I wanted to be a documentary filmmaker back in the early 2000s, in my 20s. And I was passionate about making documentary films, and I thought, well, what's stopping me from doing it? What's stopping me from doing it? And I was under a lot of stress. I think I said at my Q&A that I'd gone through 2 marriages, I dropped out of college, and I actually ended up in a mental institution because I tried to kill myself. And in that time, I had to take some self-reflection, like, what's going on? What's going on in my own mind? And I started to really dig deep, and I was like, it was fear that's been stopping me all this time. And I was like, then where is the fear coming from? I realized it was being programmed. All the information that I'd been taking all these years from people that I've known in my life, you know, friends, family, not to put a blame on anyone, but just the information that's come into my head. But as I started to understand, I started to look at society itself, and I was like, these are the same systems in politics. These are the same systems in religions. They're the same systems that are going on, and it's like a fractal. So that's what I wanted to know, and I thought of it like if we're in a network, like if this is an internet and we're all connected to each other within a network, what is spreading that? What is my fear spreading to you? Is your fear spreading to me? Is the politician's fear spreading to us? Is religion spreading to us? So that was the reason why I felt I needed to make the films. What was generating all that fear? So. Whoa.
Excellent. So media, I mean, you guys are all in the business basically of media, and then the media, and that's another part that you hit on that really creates a lot of fear for internationally. So I want to talk about media and just the influence that you think that you have in the media. So that's sort of my next question for you guys to think about, which is actually what this is about, Conscious Film Panel, and really the influence and the effect that, your power, you have a power and how you're using it. So you want to start, Richard, as you have a mic in your hand?
Okay. As a film distributor, many filmmakers do wonderful, wonderful films and then wonder how are they going to get it out to the world. And we realize that we are a media company, an information company, in providing assistance to filmmakers to bring their works to the broadest possible audience. And I think one of the influences, like Betsy with What the Bleep, when it first came out, it really opened a lot of doors and opened things in the media so that the media itself was more receptive to the kinds of films that we were then bringing forth, like The Secret, for example, or the Orbs movie, where it's something that is a whole new phenomena that we're talking about. But I really thank all of you, because without you watching and purchasing and sharing these films, none of us would be able to get those messages out. So I'd say thank you to all of you.
Okay, Betsy, can you, grab the mic, Betsy.
We were talking about this backstage. I think it's really great that we know where we have, the Bleep came out and it opened a lot of doors, but the interesting thing about the Bleep that's different than a lot of some of these other films is that the Bleep had a very mainstream appeal to it. It had an Academy Award-winning actress as a star, and it had a storyline. And those elements are what helped us get into movie theaters, because when I went to a movie theater and said, I have a movie about quantum physics and spirituality, they would have said, what? So I went to a movie theater and I said, I have a movie and it's starring Academy Award-winning Marlee Matlin. And then they said, oh, sure, we'll play that movie. And so in doing, in using those tools, I was able to, that really helped, I think, the Bleep get out to a wider audience. But it also, the success of the Bleep, people ask me all the time, like, well, did you know you were going to make such a successful film? And I say, no, we just made the movie from our heart. What made that movie successful was that people went to the movie 15, 16, 17. It literally played in Phoenix for a year straight. Not closing in one theater for a year, and people went back again and they took their friends. So it's not so much, because the media, if you want to think about the media, I was referred to as the mouthpiece of Satan by the San Francisco Chronicle.
Which is true, actually.
I know. I claim that proudly, actually. But, and the media, and now when you look at reviews and newspapers, because I distributed films for a while, they trash all these movies. These movies get ripped to the thread. It's not so much that the media is creating the impact, it's the audience that's creating the impact. It's the audience that continues to stand up and say, hey, we want these movies. To that end, I will just say one thing. I'm going to offer a challenge to everybody in this theater right now, because as a distributor, I don't distribute films anymore. I finally just said I can only make films. I can only deal with one crazy filmmaker, and that's me. But the thing that's very difficult is that after The Bleep came out and after The Secret came out, lots and lots and lots of movies got made. Some of them really great, some of them not so great. But, they all tried to go to the theater and they tried to do that same sort of model that The Bleep and The Secret did. And I think what happened is that there was a little bit of a overwhelm in the marketplace for a while. And what happened to the audience is the audience, you guys, I hate to say this, y'all got a little entitled and y'all got a little lazy and you stopped going to the movie theaters and you started to go to the free screenings. And you started to wait for it to be on Netflix. I have a What the Bleep page. It's got like 150,000 people on it. And I can't tell you how many times a day when I post about a movie, not my movie, just somebody else's movie, that I hear, well, when will it be on Netflix? And how can I watch it for free? And it's the problem with that is that people think that the Bleep made gazillions and gazillions of dollars, which actually it did. Unfortunately, the filmmakers didn't make that money. The theater made that money. The distributor made that money. There's a lot of people that are in the pie before the filmmaker actually gets any money. And so the only way we actually get to make more movies is if you actually pay for those movies. So nowadays, you know, people watch movies on Netflix, or there's lots of torrent sites. You know, What the Bleep is actually one of the, still to this day, one of the highest pirated movies ever. And we have to be conscious about that. We have to stop that. So I invite you from now on that, you know, next time you're invited to a free screening, buy the DVD in the back of the room. If you see the movies on Netflix, I guarantee you it's also on iTunes. Watch it on iTunes or Amazon, because at least the filmmaker is getting a teeny tiny bit, like at the $3.99, I think the filmmaker gets like 30 cents, but at least it's something, because it's up to you. We can only do this if you guys keep supporting it, and the way that it gets supported in this current paradigm is by paying for it, because these movies are not cheap to make. As an example, the Bleep cost, between production and distribution costs alone, were $10 million.
And that was a lot of money in those days.
That was a lot of money. It took us $4 million to do that theatrical distribution. $4 million. And so that money has to get paid back so that that investor will be excited enough to invest in another movie. So that's, I think that's where we are now, is that there's a huge sense of entitlement within the spiritual community that this information should be for free and people should get to go see the movie for free. And so I rant on this all the time, is that I really invite you guys to make sure that you throw some money at those filmmakers, because this is how we continue to make the movies that we're making. That's how we're able to make the new Bleep. That Bleep finally made its money back. It actually took 10 years for the investor to get all of his money back so that then we could go make another one.
Well, and don't you also feel that it's just an integrity? I mean, if you're getting something that's a great product, we pay for it. It's just like in music or in anything that we're doing, that it just makes sense instead of trying to find a way to knock it off, because it's really like stealing, in my opinion. Austin.
Yeah, I actually have a different thought about this whole aspect of quote-unquote consciousness in film. And that is, I think as filmmakers and even as a community, we have to do a better job at building a bridge with the community we don't think is conscious. I mean, if you even think of this idea of calling something conscious filmmaking, that implies that other filmmaking isn't conscious. And that's terribly insulting, and it's very arrogant, I think, of our community to think that, you know, somehow we have enlightened films. And there's a lot of enlightenment and a lot of consciousness in all filmmaking and all storytelling. And I think we have to do a better job at putting our concepts and our ideas into a language that builds a unifying bridge, as opposed to kind of treating the outside world outside of this community as somehow less conscious or less, because it's just not true. And it creates a separation rather than a unifying.
Well, I appreciate that, because I think that's true. And there's so many movies I mean, if we all asked, okay, what are your top 5 movies? A lot of them would just be amazing stories. You know, It's a Wonderful Life, whatever. You know, all these movies that have come out. I even think of Tom Shadyac, who did, of course, we all know I Am. But all of his movies had heart, and all of his movies had a message. And, you know, he made a lot more money doing that, and he made a fraction. I mean, again, with the money thing, I Am made like nothing. I don't even think it made its money back ever. I don't know if it ever will. But again, I appreciate you saying that, because I think that is true. And I think your point is very well taken too, that we should just pay for what we get and support, you know, just as we do when we talk about supporting Sedona and going shopping and buying food, or supporting the people out here who've brought their things. It's like, it just makes sense. I think it's just fair.
I want to speak to both of those elements because they're so important. And one is certainly the support of the films that are being made, because as documentary filmmakers, I love the question. People are like, how did you get financing? And I said, I put it on my American Express, right? And I think one of the coolest things as a gift for someone, whether it's a birthday or a holiday, is just to order 3-4 books that you love, or 3-4 films, because that's certainly all I do now that I've spent a lot on documentary film, and I've ordered a couple of the films here as gifts for people. And I think also that the number of people that want to go to a free screening versus the number of people who really are in this space to say, hey, you know, I've seen the film, I've come to a screening, can I order 5 or 6? And it's never the people I expect. It always blows me away. And then in terms of the conscious filmmaking, 100%, the idea is that that, like I did a talk yesterday, and it's forward thinking, and it covers a lot of complex elements, whereas my film is highly pop accessible because it invites a broader number of people to come into it. Not to say this is, consciousness. This is about, hey, this is fun. This is a good time. Why are there a lot of recognizable faces in the film? As Betsy was saying, because it draws people in who aren't in this space. Who are people, who would say, oh, I'm interested in that actor, or that surfer, or that, guy who was in jail for such a long time. So I think that both of those elements are really important. And then lastly on that is I think the review of documentary filmmaking. Film critics want to take apart what's wrong with the film. So I think it lies within the audiences to say, hey, I saw The Cove, and people ask me about The Cove. It's one of my all-time favorite documentary films. And I say, go see The Cove. They say, oh, I can't handle that. It's killing dolphins. And I say, that's BS. It's an adventure story about regular people like you and me who do something extraordinary. And it changed my life, that movie. I ordered 10 for people and said, look, you got to see this film. It's fantastic. And so I think that the obligation for somebody who wants to kind of perpetuate compassion or an awakening about fear or about the ice caps or about conscience or whatever it is in the world, that when they come from a film like that, even if they find elements in it that are challenging, they should say to their friends, no, the film's amazing, you gotta see it, versus, it's tough, dolphins die in that film. I don't think that it's, the change isn't gonna happen through that route, right?
I appreciate that, yeah. And again, I always like to talk about the power of one. So I think as a non-filmmaker, I have a radio show, and my tagline's the power of one, because I often myself feel a little powerless. What can I do? I mean, there's all these issues and problems in the world and everything. And again, all of us can do something, and it's very difficult for anyone to do everything, but we can all do something. And so I think even in seeing these movies yesterday, there are a few changes I'm going to make. There are a few things I'm going to actually do. There are a few little action steps that are going to happen in my life. And I feel hopefully permanently changed from some of these movies I saw yesterday. And I think that's the beauty that you guys bring to us, because we get inspired, and maybe like seeing that movie, maybe somebody will there'll be, 5 people out there in the million people who will see it, or the 100,000 who will take it on and do something. Or maybe, we can do things like we can vote with our dollar. We can be active in the way we can be. So did you have something to say to that, Patrick?
Yeah, actually I did. I think that really is the goal as a filmmaker. The kind of the highest compliment or the highest achievement as a filmmaker, if somebody watches your film and doesn't walk out of the room, full of air and good feeling, they actually change that into an action. I love the idea that someone could watch a movie that you made and go make a difficult phone call that they've been wanting to do, or do some task that they had been putting off. That to me really is the ultimate goal or idea or compliment to making a film. And I think Austin actually, he's doing a study, his film is actually in a study about that very thing. You can talk about that.
Yeah,
then you'll be next, Ben.
I think one of the things that will help is, again, putting it into a language that actually builds a bridge with the mainstream. That was one of the things that we tried to do. I actually made my film originally for PBS, and I got picked up by PBS after we did our theatrical run. I think because we were successful in using language, a lot like Sebastian's film, talking about intimacy. Well, everyone can relate to intimacy. Everyone can relate to principles like hope, or it doesn't matter what kind of religion you're in, what community you're in. And when you do that, then you attract, obviously, those kind of mainstream interests back into your film. And one of the things, I got approached a couple months ago by a couple of university professors who said, we want to do a research study on the effect of film on actually affecting people's attitudes and beliefs, which is a precursor to behavior. And we want to take your film through a research study, to do that so we can publish it in scientific journals. And when they came back to me after a month of doing the research, they said, we were shocked to find that there's actually never been a study of this, ever. There's never been a film that's been studied to see if it actually has an impact on persons' attitudes and beliefs. So our film, fortunately, will be one of the first ones ever in the history of psychological literature to look at that.
Hey, Sonny, I wanted to just say something to you asked me earlier, like, why we make movies. I mean, I think that ultimately storytelling is, you know, the ancient tradition, and that's I mean, we're in the new technology is not new, but I mean, film is the new storytelling medium, and ultimately, that's really what we're doing. We're sharing information through stories, and it's really, I think, I'm surprised no one's ever done a study like that, because it's like, duh, right? But because I watched a movie, you know, just the other day, and it really impacted me. And it wasn't anything, quote, spiritual or conscious, or it didn't have a label on it. The thing about labels that's really interesting is that the entertainment business loves labels. And so does the publishing industry, which always irritates me, because you have to land on a shelf. You know, that's the way it works. You have to fit into this genre. And so, you know, when the Bleep came out, it was very interesting, because they kept asking me, well, what is it? Is it a film? Is it a drama? Is it a documentary? And then the IDA, which is the International Documentary Association, said, well, we're going to call it a hybrid documentary. And we were kind of like, okay, if that's what you want to call it, whatever. But they feel very compelled. And then they developed, it's interesting, because the media and the stores are really the ones who've been pushing this idea of conscious filmmaking, because then they can put a sign up that says, here, look over here, people, those are the conscious movies. And it's up to us to be able to sort of really shift how these labels are perceived in the world, because that's where they're getting them from. They think that the only way you're going to buy these movies is if you understand it's in the conscious section. You know, the Bleep book couldn't be in the science section and or the self-help section. It had to be in one or the other. And I think we're really coming to a space where everything is mushing together. And that's what's really cool about, like, I love the fact that I can make a film that's got a drama and a documentary and put it together in a way that really compels people to have an emotional experience and an intellectual experience at the same time.
Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, I want to speak on that too, about the whole label thing. I mean, obviously as a new filmmaker myself, I'm wearing a shirt set outside the box. I feel like I'm a yin and yang. I don't feel like I fit in conscious or non-conscious. I'm a skeptic atheist, but I'm also on a spiritual journey. A lot of time the spiritual community doesn't get that I'm skeptical and I question it, and then when I'm with the science community, they don't get that I'm trying to understand it. So these labels mean nothing. It's the yin and yang to me, and I'm going to be, it's following your own way these days. It really is finding yourself and figuring out who you are in your own direction, so.
Go ahead, Patrick. I was just going to say about the labeling thing, though, too. For so long, it's been in anything. You know, if it's fashion, if it's whatever, books. You know, people just, you know, distributors feel like they need to do that so that when somebody comes in, they just kind of know what they're up to. So, you know, it's sort of a human kind of just, because there is so much that they do it for that reason, and so figuring out a way to, you know, get around it.
I agree with that. Actually, I was going to say it is that way because the audience is built that way, you know. And I work as my day job as a commercial director. I direct commercials, and we deal with labels all day, every day. I mean, you really have to hone in on your audience and create the spot for that particular audience. And in those situations, as a filmmaker, you have to be conscious that people are unconscious, if that makes sense, you know. And so you have to be conscious that if I make a film and it's going to go in the conscious film section, that you have to know that that's what's going to happen, so that you can plan accordingly. And then from there, you can branch out and say, well, I don't want to do that. I'm going to do a hybrid documentary. But at least to be conscious of your audience as a filmmaker or a media person is very important.
I tell people all the time, you know, that it's really unsexy and feels very uncreative when you start to make a project to really define who your audience is going to be. But if you don't define it, then your film probably won't be very successful, because it's just going to be all over the place. And the other thing is that when you go to sell your movie, you have to be, there are a lot of gatekeepers, and you have to be able to make sure that they understand how to sell your movie so that it can get out into the world. And we did that really well with the Bleep. I mean, we understood from the beginning who our core audience was. We went to them first, and then they carried the movie outward. And so it's hard to not try to be focused on one specific genre or audience, but you sort of have to be in the beginning. I think it also makes you a better storyteller, because if you understand who you're trying to speak to, sure, there's going to be people that are outside of that or that might branch out a little bit, but it helps you be a better storyteller.
And I would say I hope that happens for all of you guys, because I think that there is a core audience that you all draw in, and my wish for you is that then it does go out, like you're saying, that people give it to their friends and give it to somebody that's going through a crisis, or, you know, whatever it is, who can be wherever they are in the world, or in consciousness, or in intellectual ability, or anything, and and just spread it, because that's what we're all here for. Am I right? We just want more people to hear what we believe is important, and we want all peeps to hear it. Did you have something to say? Go.
I do. I don't think there's anything wrong with labels. I think it actually helps people. I know when I look for things, it helps me focus on what I'm looking for and hone down my search. And as someone who's marketing to the public with the film, I think you really have to learn how to use these labels and use them in a marketing way. Otherwise, you're dead. I mean, everybody wants labels because it helps them focus. There's nothing wrong with it, in my estimation.
Go in, Richard. You're our main marketing person.
Okay.
So.
Well,
Richard, who's a labeler.
Well, that's true, Paul, too.
Actually, I deal with people who do label. I have to deal with bookstores like Barnes & Noble. They have certain sections, and as Betsy said, you either fit in a section or you're something that they don't know what to do with. But what I was going to also talk about is that I think as filmmakers and as a distributor, I have a fiduciary responsibility to the films and to the filmmakers, because they're looking to me to get their film out in as big a way as possible. And we also have a fiduciary responsibility to the audience, because we have to deliver something that is quality, that they will enjoy, and they will learn something from it. And what I have found now in the distribution side is that we have to be really creative to find audiences. With what Austin was talking about, we are now partnering with a film distribution company, a large company that only supplies material to the education market, to high schools, colleges, and they are looking at all of the films that we're distributing to see if they can take a small section of that film and create a curriculum around it. We are also working with churches to provide fundraisers for churches so that they will do a screening of the film, and then people can purchase films there as well. With Paul's film, there are Afterlife conferences all over the country now. So his film fits in, his Afterlife film fits in perfectly for that. So we're looking at every possible way, because there are fewer and fewer traditional outlets. Borders is gone, Barnes & Noble is shrinking. So we're now doing online webinars, teleseminars, and Google Hangouts, where we can bring the filmmaker on. We can put together a package of product at a discount for our audience, and also provide free content for them as a gift as well. So we're reinventing ourselves constantly.
Yeah, I guess that's where it is now, is like you're saying, being outside of the box and getting creative about how to do it, because it is a new world, and the way people are just, like we were even talking about, not so much going to movies anymore, but getting them on even iPhones. And I was chatting with Betsy about that. I was saying, gosh, I mean, I always want to go to the movies because the experience is bigger and better, and the sound, and I'm laughing with the people or crying with the people and all that. And
well, you have to be innovative, because you either look, technology is going to come and it's going to do its thing, and you either have to be participating in that or not. So, when we made the first Bleep, remember, there was no Facebook, there was no Twitter. There wasn't, I think email was kind of popular.
You certainly didn't watch things on iPhones.
No, but now as we're making, it's crazy that that was only 10 years ago. There was no Facebook or Twitter, or we had no, it was all guerrilla at that time. And now as we're making the new Bleep, it's interesting because we're not only making a new film, but everything that we go out and shoot, now we look at it and we say, well, oh, that's not really going to work in the movie, but it'll make a great, Facebook video, or it'll make a great something else, because there's so many more elements to create. And it's stressful as a filmmaker, because all you really want to do is just make a movie, but it's also really exciting because it's, when we went, for instance, on the original Bleep, we had 90 hours of interview footage. 90 hours. Right now, to this day, on the new Bleep, I probably have about 70. Wow. and I'm probably going to do another 30 more. The great thing is that now that all that footage just doesn't go to waste. There's other avenues and places. So you may see the movie. Right now, the new Bleep is probably going to be in 3D, so you're going to have to see it in theaters. But there'll be ways that we can also share in all the different other mediums.
Nice. I was going to say to you, Austin, also that I think you were saying that there was another hour. Was it? Yeah. And I really want to buy the DVD about that, because I love that there are elements of that you go much deeper into, which I'm really interested in checking out. And you had a comment?
I always will have a comment. I don't know if you have a specific question.
You got the mic, so I figured you wanted to jump in there. Oh, okay, go for it. Sebastian?
The dissemination of the content, like Richard was speaking about, and his innovation with Beyond Words Publishing is really where it's at. And I'd like to offer that opportunity as well to the audience to participate in that. My film, it's a two-part documentary film, Awakening World, which I showed a little bit of last night, and then Spirit Revolution. It's under the site LoveSexGod, so that it's labeled for people on a broader scale. That's also interesting. But it's interesting, the traffic that I've had come in through there where people have said, hey, I want to show this at my church, or I want to show this at my school. And I've said, okay, well, let's just create a win-win opportunity. You tell me how it works. Should I come and then you guys will buy a few, or what works for you? You let me know and I'll show up. Currently it shows at the University of Hawaii at Love, Sex, and Religion class. And so I went there and spoke, and a few people bought the DVDs. It's great. And that's a win-win, everybody. And so now I said, look, you can play that portion about love, just a 7-minute portion, what is love, as long as you want. You know, it's a win-win all the way. So if you're in the audience and you have friends who have a school or a community yoga center, a lot of yoga centers play my film, and you want to show it, we'll create a win-win, and all these filmmakers, I'm sure, would love to participate in that way, because that's really where the future is, and that's really where it's at, I think, currently. Even.
Nice. Yeah, and I think
unless you're in China, China is building 100 movie theaters like a week. Other than that, it's really strange. And here in the United States, movie theaters are closing like left and right. You know, the whole idea of going to a movie theater, or they're doing these like, you know, dinner theaters where you can go to a movie and get a beer and a meal, but it costs like $40. So, you know, the whole idea of, I wrote something recently, it was called, you know, my kids asking me, Mommy, what's a movie theater? Because I think by the time they're older, they won't even know what a movie theater is. Like, they'll just be so used to watching, you know, Superman on their phone.
Like the drive-in. Yeah. How fun was that?
They definitely don't know what a drive-in. The drive-in is a swap meet in their world. Right?
You know, one of the things is, you notice we haven't even defined consciousness still. We've been here almost an hour, and the main thing that we're trying to do as filmmakers is get you guys engaged as the audience. I mean, some people turn into Desperate Housewives and American Idol and all these other programming to get information, and you're not seeing what we're trying to create, because we know you guys have stories. We know you guys have thoughts and feelings. Obviously, you came here to learn these things. We're trying to give you that entertainment and that informational value that you're not getting. Journalism is dead to me. It's infotainment, you know, CNN, Fox News, I don't care what political side you are. We're trying to bring the awareness that they're refusing to do, and that's what's even more important about this whole consciousness thing. That, to me, is consciousness. So.
Amen. Thank you. Absolutely. Yeah, and again, I mean, we all vote with our dollar, and if we're supporting things like this, even with the distributors, and again, if it's just like anything, if there's more demand and a little more push for it, then people will open up their eyes to other possibilities. And, you know, luckily now this is, I mean, maybe with What's the Bleep, kind of open people up then from, I mean, obviously the other genres that we have, the romance, the comedies, you know, the action films and stuff like that. But, so it's a good thing. And so thank you for that, Ben. I appreciate that. So did you have anything to say to that, Austin? You have that mic again.
I'm happy to talk. Why don't I just start talking and then... I mean, I just think it's important. Again, I think the good news is we're seeing evolution, right? We're seeing evolution even in technology. I mean, a perfect example in music, I don't know how many people in the audience are aware of a musician by the name of Lindsay Sterling. Really amazing young woman from Arizona, plays the violin. She was on America's Got Talent. She was kicked off, and I think Piers Morgan made the comment that there wasn't really room for her music in the current music scene because, quote unquote, it didn't fit one of these genres. So she produced the album herself, put it online. It sold 3 million copies. It's gone worldwide. It's taking off. And I think you know, with all due respect to the distributors of the world, they better change pretty quickly, because technology is changing rapidly enough that it's giving any individual, you know, who today can't put out something, and if it's creative enough and entertaining enough or educating enough, you can literally have an audience around the world because of the internet and because of what technology is available. So all of the excuses of like who controls and who has the power and what genre are really falling by the wayside, and evolution is giving us a platform to be able to have a voice that is solely dependent on our own creativity around it, which I think is amazing.
Creativity and support.
We have just a few minutes left in this segment, and I'd like to open it up to anybody who might want to ask any of our filmmakers any questions. If you want to, come on up to the mic.
Sounds great. And no, but Patrick has one thing to say, and then I'll open it up. Go for it, Patrick. Oh, no.
I was just going to make a point about the music example that Austin just gave, and that is that as a filmmaker now, the evolution is allowing a lot of people to do it, because so your marketplace, no matter what film or music you make, is crowded with people. And so as a filmmaker, your job is to really figure out how to rise above that. And so you know, whereas 10 years ago you didn't have that much competition, now there's probably 100 times more people in the space that you're in. So you really have to push yourself creatively to come out with a new product, something that no one's seen or heard before is difficult to come up with in a big sea of really creative people.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people here are people who are supportive of the arts and of the message. And I think, again, that's something that's just being socially conscious people and just, you know, people of humanity, that it's sort of our responsibility at this point to push or not push, but to inspire or to communicate to other people and to just allow other people to know what's up. I mean, I feel like that's my job. I don't do what you do, but I feel that as the power of one, that's kind of my job. So let's all do that. Do we have any questions, or as people are gathering around? Yeah, so the microphone is back there where there's a light, and just gather around there and we'll take your questions.
Hi, my name's Danette. I'm bringing a new film festival to town, a conscious film festival called Illuminate. And the thought behind it is that we want to facilitate the promotion of your films worldwide. Each of you have had a different challenge in getting your films out. And of course, Richard, I know that's your mission as well, for the few number of films that you can you know, honor with your effort and your energy. What is it that other organizations can do, and what is it that your audience needs to do to get your films and your colleagues' films out into the world?
So we have 7 people here. Yeah, go ahead, go see them. Yeah,
exactly. I think as far from an audience standpoint, you know, if you're really into the message or into that genre, you know, you just patronize those films, and that really goes a long way. And then, you know, from the filmmaker side, you know, it's our job to give you something that you want to watch.
And I think making it convenient and easy to locate. So I think as somebody who runs a festival, which sounds like a very cool festival that you're doing, Illuminate, to say, okay, Sebastian's film LoveSexGod, Awakening World played, and you can get it here. And, you know, it makes a great gift. If you get 5 of them, you can get them through Beyond Words, order them, and you know, give them as gifts for the holiday coming up. But I think when people are shopping online, that they're used to now, we're all used to that kind of thing. Hey, you bought these boots before, you probably like these. So we're like on kind of you know, an expectation of the internet to inform us. So I think with a site like a film festival, offering that same kind of opportunity to share the content would be very effective. And what a great question. Thanks so much for that. Yeah.
Good luck with your event, by the way.
Thank you. One last thing, I would like to do something to help all of your films and sell DVDs, whatever it is that you need. And I'd like to invite you to be part of what we're doing, which is a Conscious Filmmakers Network.
Thank you.
There you go. See, here we go. Thank you so much, and that's what we're talking about. That's pretty perfect. So go ahead and gather, and as we do, Patrick, did you have something else to say because you have the mic, or whoever wants to grab it? Do we have another person appearing? No, they're just going by. Okay, cool. So, yeah, but with that, thank you. Also, I think that is part of it is again, I mean, it's the advertising, it's the letting, you know, again, it used to be Borders and, you know, these kinds of things, or going to the movie theater, and now it is sort of how to purchase them and how to get at them.
Well, the way you used to advertise movies, I mean, it used to be that you bought an ad in a newspaper that was ridiculously expensive, and you hoped people showed up, and you bought TV ads. And, you know, films, like my films, I don't even buy advertising anymore because it just doesn't work. It's so expensive. I mean, so often, a lot of the independent, I mean, I was lucky with the Bleep because we were fully funded. I mean, we had $4 million to distribute our film. That was, you know, we were very lucky to do that, and we spent every penny of it, and look what we got in return. I mean, it's exponential, and a lot of these films don't have that kind of budget. And so, you know, what we count on is word of mouth. That's really what we count on. So it's just like with everything, you know, you have this amazing tool, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, I don't even know, there's a gazillion more. And so what we really need is you to stand up and say, I saw this movie and it blew my mind. Like, you know, I saw, what's the right name of your movie? A Virus Called Fear. I actually saw that on Sedona World Wisdom Days website, probably, or somewhere, like randomly. And I was like, oh, what's that? Like, no, it wasn't, and I clicked on it, and I watched it, and I was like, that is amazing. I have never heard of this film. I've never seen it. And then what I did is I went and put it on my Bleep pages. I blasted that baby everywhere, because it was so great. That's what you have to do. You have to say, I just watched this. It was amazing. It blew my mind, everywhere that you can, because that's really what it takes. And also, you can't buy that kind of advertising. Like, I can buy an ad in the LA Times, sure, but I can't buy you telling your friends how great it is. And that makes the biggest impact of all, you know.
Also, as filmmakers, you know, you can use the new technology. So I'm just going to take a Facebook shot of us really quickly here.
Photobomb, photobomb.
I got photobombed.
Patrick, take a picture, and then he's going to take a picture of you taking pictures, yeah. Like, I want you guys to know that I had a few, this is so perfect. I had a couple of people, I actually had Betsy and Mackenzie Phillips and Glenn and Jerry in my studio in Hollywood. And I looked up, I mean, it was so hilarious. Everybody was yelling and screaming and laughing and getting to know each other and everything. We could hear, they told me later that they could hear all these guys, you know, 2 studios away. But at one point, I actually had to stop, and I took pictures of all you guys tweeting and everything. It was the most hilarious thing. I looked up, and all 4 of you were on your cameras, on your phones like this. And it's like, you know, again, that's a new way.
Well, I want to thank all our filmmakers for coming out here today. And Sonny, you did a beautiful job moderating this panel.